Now the fusible link is this right here. Per the instructions, this is required. You tag that on to the end of the red. So what I'll do is I'm going to cut this off right about here and then add that to it and then heat shrink it. Hello, welcome back to the channel, and welcome again. If you saw the short that I posted a couple of days ago, you'll know that we're going to start doing things a little bit differently here on the channel. I've got some new equipment for video. I'm no longer going to be doing most of the videoing from my phone, so I will be able to set a camera up and actually show the work that I'm doing in addition to just showing you the before and after is what I've usually been doing. I've had some people comment that they would like a little bit more detailed content, so that's what we're going to try to do. What we're going to work on the Cobra today is we're going to start finishing up, hopefully finishing up, the wiring of the wiring harness, starting with getting the battery cables ready. I've already done one of the battery cables to test my method on that. Get some connections hooked up under the hood. I'm still waiting for some parts to come in to get the dash ready for wiring, but part of this video a little bit later on is going to be wiring up of the dash and getting it mounted as well. So I hope you enjoy the ride. Let's get busy. Now what we've got here is we've got the battery box mounting back here for the battery. I've already gotten one of these. I'm using some marine style battery connectors here. As you can see, I've already got this particular one wired up and ready to go. I also have got to get ready for this one as well. I haven't decided. I've got the cables here run pretty well between this opening here between the actual pan for the trunk and the pan for the cockpit of the car. I may actually go in here and do a little bit of drilling and clean that up a little bit later, but we're not going to worry about that right now, because what we're going to do now is we're going to show how we basically will take this, strip this off, put the crimpable end on it, and get that cable set up. So let's get busy. First thing you have to do is you have to trim off the end of this cable here to get the insulation off to mount it. I don't have crimper big enough to actually do this, and I can't find my razor blades, so what I'm going to just try to do is run the cutting section of my crimp tool here around the edge to cut the insulation loose on this. The insulation is so thick on this, this is something you can do. It just takes a little bit of time and patience to do it neatly. And there we have that right there is good to go. So basically I'm just using a crimp method on these. You can solder these, and on some of these I have solder, but I'm out of solder and my torch is out of gas. So I'm just going to do the crimp, and I'm going to seal it off with Tessa tape. So get ready to crimp this down. Like so. And I like to do this in two different sections here so I can get a good crimp on it so it's not going to let go. And you can see there we've got a really, really nice connection there. Now I'm going to take the Tessa tape, which is a cloth variety of electrical tape that is used by GM and a number of other manufacturers. And this is what I will be looming the wire under the hood with as well. Makes a nice heat resistant and weatherproof connection for that. So just wrap that up there. And that insulates that off. And with these marine connectors with that particular type there, you just basically will do this. I've also got another cable here which has got to be run to the battery ground as well. Connect that down. These marine connections give you a little bit of flexibility that you don't have, and they also give you a better connection than some of the regular cheaper battery terminal connectors do. Got that nice and tight, so I've got battery cables ready to go, so that is ready to go. Okay, now what we've got here, we've got the three main wires that feed the fuse box underneath the dash. We've got a purple wire, a red wire, and the black wire. The black wire is F4 main ground. If I can keep my pup here from knocking my tripod over. The purple one goes to the starter solenoid, the red one is your main power to that. Now, what the instructions tell you to do. This goes to the main ground. What I'm going to be doing, and I'm going to be routing this over to the passenger side of the car, close to where the ground strap goes. I've got the negative grounding cable for the battery hooked up to the block, the engine block. I'm going to hook a ground cable up to that ground as also, and then drill a hole in the frame and mount the ground strap to the frame to give that a good ground. And I will also mount this to that same area in the ground strap also. One thing I'm waiting on there is the connector or the bolt rather, I'm going to be using to bolt it into the frame. Those will be here later today, but I can at least go ahead and get part of this loomed and get ready to get these done. I've already got the purple wire cut to fit, and it is heat shrunk and has the terminal end on it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to loom up to about that point, roughly a little bit before that, and then cut the red wire to fit and the ground wire to length as well. Now on the red one, you've also got a fusible link you have to put on the end of it before you bolt it up to the battery terminal side of the starter solenoid, which is where the positive battery cable goes as well. This is the fusible link, so what I'll do is I'll cut the red wire to length, put this on the end of it, heat shrink that, and then I will be ready to bolt that up as well. So I can go ahead and do the main and the purple, and when my bolts get here a little later this afternoon, I'll go ahead and be able to do the ground. Right now what we're going to do is we're going to be getting ready to loom this a little bit. I'm going to push it back through here. I'm going to loom just a little bit here so it's loomed going through my rubber grommet here going through the firewall. It's a little bit of a tight fit, but if you can get it in there, it's usually good. That way you've got a little bit of added protection, a little bit of added protection added on to the installation of the actual wire, so we don't have any problems with that. It's always a good idea to get as much protection of your wires as possible if they're going through a bulkhead or some other area where over time vibration of the car and simply driving of the car can wear that insulation down, and then you have a dead short. You don't want that, of course. So obviously the more loom you can add to the wires the better, and give you a nice bit of protection against eventual decay or damaging of the wires and shorting it out. Okay, added just a little bit of the loom there, push this through the grommet area, feed that through, like so. Push my grommet back in because it did come out. And now we have a good connection. I will fix that. Okay, got my grommet back in position. Now we're going to go ahead and loom this a little bit. Now very quickly you'll see that I've got this fed through here, feeding down through here, and if I can get a little bit of light in here, this purple connector goes on to that part of the solenoid, and the red wire does as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hook up the solenoid wire back up. Then I'm going to come up here with some rubber clamps, and I'm going to secure the wiring to the firewall to where it's nice and neat, tucked out of the way, but secure. Okay, now that I've basically got these in the ballpark of where they need to be, I'm going to untangle the actual wires to where they're separated out. Like I said, this red wire and the purple wire terminate in roughly the same place, so they can be in the same area. So let me get this a little bit untangled here. This is always a problem when you're running great lengths of wires, is sometimes you end up with a little bit of a tangled mess. Sorry about the movement of the camera. My dog Clifford decided he suddenly wanted to sit down right next to the tripod and jar the tripod. But so here we go. Move this around a little bit. Purple wire's right about there. I am going to have to add the fusible link to the end of that. Now the fusible link is this right here. Per the instructions, this is required. You tag that on to the end of the red. So what I'll do is I'm going to cut this off right about here and then add that to it and then heat shrink it. Strip this wire off. It's about 10 gauge. Where you've got that ready to go. Then this fusible link is just a crimp link with the heat shrink right here. So what I'll do is I'll crimp this on and then heat shrink it. Now you'll notice you've got handy thing most people know with wiring, but it's always a good thing to point stuff out, the obvious stuff out sometimes, is you'll notice that you've got a blue stripe here and you've got a yellow stripe here. The cool thing about that is that corresponds with your colors on your crimp tool, if you can see that, because the gray wire is a little bit smaller gauge than the red wire, so you use the blue end to crimp there and the yellow to crimp there. Then once that's done, you slide your heat shrink on and you grab your heat gun. See, after just for a few seconds, now we've got a very nice and sturdy link there. So the power wire and the solenoid wire are both ready to go onto the starter. And here we are some minutes later. See if we can actually get down in here and see. Those wires are connected to the solenoid. I've got it routed up, run through loom, all the way to the dash, looking nice and neat. So now all I've got left is to cut this wire to fit. I'm going to see if my terminal will allow it to go into the block. That way I've only got the grounding strap here running from the block to the frame, but we'll check that out right now. Okay, you can see here I've got the ground wire cut to fit and stripped off. Got the heat shrink on it. Getting ready to run the crimp down in it, like so. I can get that in there. Sometimes you have to be a little bit delicate with these to get them all to get your connector in there, because it sometimes is a tight fit just like that. But that's in there. Now we crimp it again, yellow to yellow. Okay, that's got a good connection on it. Now we're going to put our heat shrink on it as an extra layer of protection. Really hard to do this when you have a golden retriever licking your arm. Heat it all around, get yourself a nice tight fit. See how that form fits? Now that's good. Now I test fitted this. I am going to be able to put it on the same as the block plate, the ground cable to the block. So I'm going to mount this, the ground strap, and the negative battery cable to the block, and then run this to the frame. Okay, let's zoom in just a little bit to see as much as we can see. The ground strap, the ground to the instruments under the dash, and the ground to the battery are all hooked up there. You'll notice that I'm very careful in keeping everything well away from the exhaust. All of that is loom, so all of my mainline connections are taken care of with the exception of getting the ground strap bolted to the frame, and of course I will do that as soon as my self-threading bolts arrive later today. Okay, if you recall in one of the previous videos, I ran the tachometer wire to the negative side of the coil, the green wire going to the sending unit for the water temperature. I've got some split loom. I actually did use split loom here because I've got a lot of really big cables associated with the EFI and all of that bundled up. But as you can see here, I've got all of this nice and neatly run now. These are the next things I'm going to be doing as far as looming goes, because they attach to the bottom side of this rail. I have to drill a hole here and run a grommet there so they can run through there, and that runs to all of the lights and the horn and everything to the front of the car. So that will be next. But as you can see, once you get in it and you start looming this wire, things really starting to neaten up quick. So far what I've gotten done, of course, I've got the temperature and tach and oil pressure sending units hooked up under the hood. I now have the solenoid, the main power to the battery cable, and the main power to under the dash, and all of the ground of that run as well. And I've got all of this loomed and ready to go here. So let's keep going. Welcome back. We're at the next morning now. Actually, 2 mornings have passed since the last bit of footage that you just saw. In the interim, while I was letting some contact stuff dry in the dash, getting ready for the next step in the dash, I actually had to run to another town and pay a visit to some guys that I used to work with 30 years ago. We had a little bit of a reunion of a music store that I used to work at many years ago. I remained friends, very close friends to all those guys. Had a wonderful time, but we're going to get back on the Cobra now, and what we're going to be doing is actually we're going to be going through and starting the looming and wiring of the dash itself. So let me show you what we've got there. Now what we're going to be doing here, you've actually basically got multiple contact points on all the gauges here. As you can see, we've got all of our gauges lined out. Most of the gauges, or all of the gauges, you've got white and black here. What this is this the grounding points and the power to the actual lights on the gauges. So what I'm going to be doing is these you can run commonality to them, which means you've got one lead for the ground and one lead for the power to the lights coming in off the harness. You can chain all of those together, which I'll be doing, and I'm also going to be connecting in some lights that are actually underneath the dash as well, which I'll show you. You've got also red and black off of a lot of the gauges as well. What those are is that is the gauge itself, power source and ground source, and then of course you've got the leads coming in from the harness for each individual gauge. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be building a chain harness for the black and white connections on each gauge and for the red and black connections on each gauge, because they're all running to one basic source. Okay, as with anything, you're going to get 15 different opinions if you ask 15 different people on the right and wrong way to wire things. Some people are going to say you should solder the ends instead of using butt connectors. I've been using butt connectors for years and years and years, never had any issues with them if you do them right, which means if you make sure you have a great connection, you heat shrink to seal it from the weather and everything, you should be just fine. But essentially what I've got here is I've got this white lead right here. The white lead is going to the white lead on all of the gauge lights, which is the power to the light bulbs to eliminate the gauges. I've got a terminator right here, and I've got to connect this one here because what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie in the main dash power to here and connect them both to this butt connector here. That way I've got power. Same goes for the electrical. You can see I've got this terminal put in place right here, and I've got this right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tie this wire and the main power into this right here, and then it feeds all the other ones. Now the reason I've got these right here leading out, I've got long leads leading out to this side, is I'll show you in just a moment, because what you can see underneath the dash I have tied in some green LEDs that are going to need power. So obviously the ground and the power are going to feed to this, and then I'm going to ground it to the chassis at that point. But what these are going to do, I've got one here and one on the other side, is this is going to add illumination in the cockpit at night. When you turn on the headlights, it will illuminate the floorboard of the tub, giving you some illumination as well. So the next step is going to be put the dash in position and feed the main inputs of the power and the ground and the light power all into the dashboard, and then also hook up the senders to each of the individual gauges that require the senders. All right, I had to pause recording for just a little bit because we had a nasty little rainstorm come through. But as you can see now, I've got everything ran as far as the cinders go. I'm going to be cleaning up these wiring connections just a little bit more, but I've still got the horn button to hook up, the dimmer switch, and the high beam pod, as well as the switch for the heater. I'll get to that shortly. But as far as that goes, these wires right here, of course, are going to run over to the glove box LED and to the underneath LED as well as ground. So basically we're getting very close to getting ready to set the dash back in, but that wiring is done. All right, dash is bolted in with the spacers. We have barely enough room for everything. Of course, I'm going to clean up this area back here quite a bit more. I've still got some grounds and some hots to run to the lights and some grounds to finish up the grounding on that. Also, a little surprise, if you remember when the previous video when I was mocking up the dash, I had a oil temperature gauge that I did not have any means of hooking up to the block because of the provisions on the engine that I have. And so it was basically just going to fill a dead hole in the dash. This being a street car, the street cars, at least some of them, did not have oil temperature gauges. Instead, they had a clock. Well, I have acquired the clock, so I will not be using the oil temperature gauge. I've got the clock right there. So all of that is hooked up. I'm about to hook up the light switch and the ignition switch to their locations and get all that done. My plan for the remainder of the day is to get those switches in position, get the grounds and the hots of those remaining lights run. The glove box, as you can see, is very, very nice, works perfectly. So that's good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start routing and looming the front body harness. So let's get busy. All right, what we have so far is most of the underdash is taken care of. We've got the ignition switch hooked up, the light switch, tachometer is wired, high beam light is wired, signal light is wired, speedometer has heat, fuel gauge is hooked up. I do have to run the fuel sender, which goes to the back of the back harness. Water temp is hooked up, the clock is hooked up, the oil pressure is manual, it is hooked up, the volts are hooked up. The heater fan is not hooked up as of yet, that will be coming. Got the horn button, the hazard switch, and the high beams. I will be hooking up the turn signal indicator, which is the VW style turn signal indicator. All of the lights are hooked up underneath the dash. Now, of course, I've got to route these through the back. I've got the preliminary routing done through here, through that grommet there to run these to the front. Now, the reason I split these up is part of this goes to the right side of the vehicle, part of it goes to the left first. Now, the ones that go to the right side of the vehicle, actually these go into the engine compartment. You've got the radiator fan power, you've got the right front turn signal, the horn, which gets mounted down in there, and this right here is the fan ground. So all of these go to components, either to the lights to the right or to things that go into the engine compartment. These here, you've got your high beam, low beam, your ground, your parking lights, and your left front turn signal. Now, the left front turn signal and the right front turn signal are independent, but the way the park lights, the high beam, and the low beam work is they tie into the headlight on the left side and then go across the vehicle to tie into the right side. So that's why I've got those terminated, or actually routed to this location here. Got a few more things to connect under the dash here, or under the hood rather. I've got some stuff here, left here. This right here is ignition switch wire that's got to go to some stuff. This, of course, is a plug that I've still got to wire into the system as well. But as you can see, I've got the, it looks a lot cleaner now than it did previously because I do have the stuff wired in. This, I've still got some cleanup to do, but everything is hooked up and ready to go. All I've got to do is clean it up and make it look nice and neat. And of course, I've got to route the back body harness. After the day that I had yesterday, all the traveling and everything, I think I'm going to call it into this video here. We will continue the wiring, getting the wires fixed for the front and run the wires to the back. And as soon as we can get all of that stuff terminated and ready to go, of course I've still got to do the turn signal switch under the dash and do a couple of other miscellaneous tidying up things there. So a little bit more to do, but we've got a lot taken care of on the wiring. I like the progress we're making. We will continue, of course. And of course, the 32, I've got some wiring to do on it. Primarily, it is in the cockpit, under the dash, things of that nature. So I'll get to work on that very, very soon. Please hit like and subscribe. I appreciate your time and indulgence. We'll catch you next time. Thanks.